Go.
Hi, my name's Dave, and welcome back to 1 Acre in the Napa Valley for episode number 5, which is leaf removal and berry development. Last time we got together probably was, it was almost a month ago. Today is Tuesday, June the 17th, and the main activity, what we're doing out in the vineyard right now, is taking some of the leaves off. Now you might be wondering, since leaves are so important to the development of the fruit and the plant, acting as a photosynthetic driver for what's going on, why would we be taking them off? Well, there's a good reason for that, and we don't take all the leaves off, but if we take them off in just a particular zone in a particular part of the plant, it can actually contribute to the health of the plant, and in addition to that, it can actually contribute to the quality of the wine. Now, where we actually take the leaves off, and matter of fact, you can look right down the row as I've been going down this way, where we take the leaves off is in about a 15 to 16 inch swath right in the fruit zone. And this does a couple of different things that we'll touch on in just a moment. Where we take the leaves off is typically on the cooler side of the plant. So I'm not taking the leaves off on both sides. In fact, if you look down this side of the row, you'll notice that there's no leaves coming off here. These rows that we have here in this vineyard are oriented east and west. So behind me, that way where the sun is coming up, is east, and the vantage point you have is, from my viewpoint, you're sitting in the west. So the north side of the vine rows is typically the cooler side. The sun will progress through the day just about like that. And as it does, then of course this will be the cooler side. The south side is typically the warmer side, so we don't take them off there, because if we do, that can kind of create some sunburn to the leaves. And where we take them off is in this particular zone here, and it does a couple of different things. One, it can improve the air movement in the vineyard, and the other thing it does is it improves the light exposure, because what we're really looking for here is kind of a filtered sunlight as far as the fruit's concerned. Now, if we take a look at our little friend here that we've been monitoring over the last few months, right next to me here, that's the next one to take a look at, you can see that the fruit is very much in a shaded area here. So what we want to do is kind of open this up, give it a little more filtered sunlight. So like I said, we don't want to strip it completely bare, but just take a few of these leaves off right around where the fruit zone is. Now, different varieties can require different amounts of removal. Typically, Cabernet and Merlot, different ones like that, it can be very healthy to take some of these off. You can see I'm just kind of pulling some off in the general area where the fruit is. You can see one of the clusters there. Now, the fruit kind of runs up like this, so I'll kind of make a band up that way. Now, one of the advantages, remember, as far as why we take these off, is greater air movement. What a shaded, restricted area as far as air movement contributes to is powdery mildew and sometimes botrytis. But when we open the canopy up a little bit like this, the added air movement kind of helps to combat with that. And you can see we can kind of open these up just a little bit. There we, in fact, there's that little tie we put on back in March, so that makes it a little bit more noticeable there. And we can pull some of the sucker shoots off too. Pop some of those off, and maybe one right here. So now we've got a little better, maybe pop one of those off. We've got a little better exposure in there. Now, we talked about air movement and what that does, but also improved light filtration, like we see here, can also help the fruit when it comes to, well, actually the winemaking side of it. Greater light exposure like this can actually affect the pigment, the color pigment in the clusters themselves. So when they're in this stage like this, it'll contribute to a more intense color in that way too. And if you look at the berries now, you can see, well, in fact, let's see this one right here. You can see they're really they're all green. There's no color to them now, but the color pigment will increase just with the added sunlight. Another thing that added sunlight and little greater temperatures and this kind of open canopy down low like this contributes to is also the aromas. They have done some studies and found that there can be more fruity aromas if something like this is done, and in addition it kind of cuts down on some of the vegetative aspects of it. Now, another really interesting thing about giving it a little bit more sunlight is that it can affect the chemical composition, specifically the acids in the fruit itself. Now, in grapes, there's several different acids that are present in the grapes themselves. The two primary acids, though, are tartaric and malic. Tartaric is a stronger acid, and it's pretty constant. Malic, though, is a weaker acid, and it's somewhat variable. Now, if you remember from maybe high school chemistry, when an acid is stronger, like a tartaric acid, the pH is actually lower, whereas a weaker acid, the pH is higher. Now, in winemaking, typically a lower pH is something that's a little bit more desirable in the fruit and also in the wine, relatively speaking. And that's because when you have a lower pH, somewhere, kind of a ballpark number is like 3.5 or so when you're dealing with that in fruit, must, or in wine. Typically at a lower pH like that, you wind up with greater color stability, and also bacteria does not tend to grow as well in lower pH solutions. So if you've got a lower pH, you can actually help the health of the wine. Now, what's really interesting about that is that the more light there is exposed in the canopy like this, the less malic acid there is. Remember, malic was the weaker acid. So we can actually affect the pH and get it in a more desirable area by reducing the malic acid. More shade produces more malic acid, which is not desirable in some effects. And so, especially in this type of a configuration here, when it comes to Merlots and Cabernets and things like that, opening up the canopy in this way can actually help the balance of the balance of the wine. Because what we want to do is we want the natural sugar content and the natural acid contents to be very balanced, or as balanced as possible when we get to crushing the fruit. Now, one thing we might look at, just kind of in finishing up here, I believe, let's see, this was one of the little clusters that we looked at the last time during bloom, but now you can see they're all kind of green pea-sized berries in here, and they're kind of spindly a little bit, but they'll keep swelling up and developing. So all of those will continue to expand and grow as we see cell division and cell expansion at that point. The next thing that we're going to see in the vineyard, what will be taking place in about a month, that'll be about the next time we're together, is veraison. And what's really neat about the veraison is the berries will start to turn color, and sometimes you'll see just like one start to turn and then another. It's almost kind of like, when you make popcorn, and one will pop and then another and then another, and then pretty soon they all go at once. So about the middle of July or so is when we'll get back together next and have a look at the veraison and the berry development. So again, usually the cooler side of the vine is where leaf removal is done, and the timing is between about veraison and bloom. So thanks again very much for joining me here today. I've got quite a bit more to go, and only get 10 minutes with YouTube. So thanks very much, and we'll see you in about a month.